This is The Business of Architecture. Helping architects conquer the world. And here's your host, Enoch Sears.
I want to welcome everyone out today to Business of Architecture, and today we have the honor of having Lee Calisti with us. And Lee Calisti started his eponymous, I've always wanted to say that, architecture firm in 2003. Words that Lee uses to describe his practice are collaborative, sensitive, and distinguished. And like many other architects who watch these interviews, Lee practices in a small town and deals with challenges that go along with that. He practices 1 hour southeast of Pittsburg, and he also writes a popular blog, Think Architect, which can be viewed at thinkarchitect.wordpress.com. So, welcome, Lee.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Thank you for your time. So first off, I thought we'd start off just asking you why you decided to go solo, because you are a sole practitioner, solo architect. Tell me why you decided to do that. Start there.
Well, I wish there was one single quick reason to give that to everybody, but I would probably say that there was a dynamic going on in my life at the time. But probably the number one reason that I did that is in 2002, my son was born, and leaving for work each day and leaving him behind, and having a long commute and a long day, and being away from him was something I just didn't want to do. I just wanted to be there for him all the time. So there was several things going on at the time, the firm I was at, and the drive for the first time in my life started to bother me. Never had bothered me before, and so I considered it for a while and thought about the ramifications. I'd been teaching part-time for probably 6 months, one semester, and I had started into the second semester teaching part-time, and my wife had a stable teaching job, so I knew that I had a bit of a safety blanket. I had run numbers. I knew what our budget was. We lived very carefully, very frugally. And I knew that if I made this change, that we were gonna be able to do it financially. We just had to be careful and continue to do what we were doing. So we had talked about it, and I didn't tell her exactly what day I was going to quit the job, but I had thought it through. And so after I went back after New Year's Day in early January of 2003, I gave notice. I needed to work for several weeks at that job because I had a pretty responsible position, and I felt it was the proper way to go. And I had total support from the firm I left. I didn't have any particular leads. I wasn't stealing work from them. I was being completely ethical, and I was not going to another firm. So the partner of the firm I was working for at the time understood my situation and was extremely supportive, wished me well, and he remains a very dear friend to this day. In fact, the other partner that I had worked with is also a very dear friend, but he had left the firm a few months before I had left that firm as well. So I left on good grounds, and I never looked back because in the past 10 years, every day I've woken up with my son. We eat breakfast together. Now I take him to school, and I have time in his life that I would never have had otherwise. So to me, it was totally worth it, and I never looked back.
Nice. So would it be fair to say that the primary motivation then was the flexible schedule of running your own practice?
I think that's a fair answer, is the flexibility over financial stability. The flexibility was there, and it was really great to be able to decide where I was going to go, when I was going to go there, and what I was going to do. And the other perks, having more say in the design process, having more say in the projects that were selected, not having a commute, those are all things that aided in that decision. And I think everything that was going on in my life at the time brought me to that point. But if you'd asked me a year prior, would you ever want to own your own firm? The answer would have been no.
And why not?
I had no interest. I enjoyed being an architect. I enjoyed doing the job that I was doing, but the issues of practice that I didn't necessarily have to do on a day-to-day basis, chasing clients and financial concerns and doing the books and all those types of things, worrying about where work was going to come from. It was just something that just didn't interest me at the time. I was very much in love with just being an architect and building buildings. But they say everything changes. It's the only thing you can count on. So that did change.
Yeah. What kind of work did you find yourself loving or that was fulfilling to you when you were working at that firm? Because you said that it sounds like you were satisfied with the work that you were doing. What aspect of the architecture profession gave you that sense of satisfaction that you enjoyed?
We were doing, for the most part, what would be considered small projects, but there was tremendous variety in the work that we did. It was rare that we ever did two projects that were the same. The work was mostly commercial, but we did have some residential work that we did in that practice. But it was very design intensive, very design focused, and I really enjoyed that. A lot of complex issues that we got to work with. So even though the projects were small, they were complex. They were challenging. You had to really work them out and make things happen. And the relationships that I developed because of those projects was very, very rewarding and very exciting, that I had the opportunity to spend that much time with the client, to spend that much time with contractors, with engineers, other people that were part of the process. But so I just liked the variety. I really enjoyed that every day, every year, every month was different, and you got to start all over. It was a lot of fun for me.
Okay. So it sounds like it was, if I can just rephrase to make sure I understood you okay, it was a combination of the interfacing with clients, other team members, the ability to get involved in the creative aspect of it, design, face complex problems. Yes.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. It was just fit for me. I was the kind of person that worked in I'd only ever worked in small firms, mm-hmm. but it fit my personality to be to have that much involvement in a project, and all the things you just said. It fit me really well. So that prepared me. It really prepared me.
Yeah. Now, when were you doing the same type of projects? How well did the projects you did at that firm prepare you for the kind of jobs that you did when you went solo?
Well, I think it was the awareness of all the issues that a project brings. And in a small firm, you wear many hats, and someone has to solve all those problems. And when there's only a person or two or three on a project, and you're the one in charge for the most part, you're the project architect, and it's your responsibility to see that the project happens. You have to rise to the challenge of figuring out who's going to do those tasks and how do I do those tasks. And I really found that I was able to do that, and I found that it was very exciting to do that, as opposed to being on a project for a long period of time, maybe several years, and only being privileged to work on a small portion of it, which is my notion, maybe inaccurate, but my notion of working in a larger firm on really large projects.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what, now one thing that I think about too, when you say that it was the flexibility, were you ever worried that having your own firm was going to take even more time than your commute and your job did? Because I know a lot of sole practitioners find that they end up working enormous hours at their firms. How many hours did you work in those early years? And maybe you can just compare that, for instance, to how many hours you spend on the business today.
Well, when I was at a previous firm, my last firm, I was a senior associate, so I had a high level of responsibility, and I was probably averaging 45 to 50 hours a week. There were occasions when it exceeded that, but very rarely would I do 60-hour weeks. It just wasn't our firm's philosophy. We were focused on getting things done and not just being in the office for the sake of being there. So working that number of hours a week wasn't anything new to me. The only thing that changed was what part of the day you started to work those hours. So when you work for yourself, and if you have a studio in your home, then now you can choose which of the 24 hours you want to work. And to be honest, once my wife and son went to bed, it was very, very common for me to go back to work. You have to find a new bit of energy to do that, but there were certain tasks you could do late at night. The phone wasn't ringing. You could be very focused, and if you're organized and you could plan what things you're going to do at that time of day, whether it's early in the morning or late at night, then you can get those hours in, you can get those tasks done, and you can be successful at doing it. That's just part of the flexibility that comes with it. And you have to be willing to do that. You have to be willing to get the things done that get done. One way or the other, they have to get done.
Okay. And how do you have an idea of how many hours it takes you now to keep your head above water?
I'm probably working the same number of hours. My schedule's changed a little bit this year to where all of us are getting up a little bit earlier, so I do tend to work. I do tend to start earlier than I have in the past few years, and there's a few less late nights. But if I had to look at my timesheets and just trying to estimate how many hours I work a week, I'm probably somewhere around 50 to 52 hours a week. It is sort of a 6-day-a-week job. I do put time in on Saturdays, not the entire day, but try to work early in the morning before my family gets up, and then occasionally an hour here on Sunday and an hour there on Sunday, but I try not to work on Sunday. But you do have to be very task-oriented. You have to think about what are the tasks that you need to get done, more so than the number of hours you're working to get those tasks done. And when you're getting tasks done, then and you're being successful as far as I'm considered.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it does take a lot of discipline to keep it to that number of hours. I mean, you have to be really focused and really make sure you get done what you need to get done and prioritize, I would imagine.
You do have to prioritize, and every month when there's books to do and closing of the month and all those types of things, then there may be more hours spent on that week than in previous weeks. And some days you're just spending, some days you're spending more time. Again, I try to limit the amount of work I spend on the weekends, but sometimes you just have to do that. In fact, case in point today, I had a rare but a meeting that I had to go to this morning, but I met my family for lunch. So you try to, again, it's that flexibility that you have to figure out how to do that, and you have to keep a good tight schedule.
Nice, okay. Well, I can see that while it's still bright and early over here in California, over there in Pennsylvania, it's beginning to be darker, but you still look fine, just to let you know, unless you turn on the light, but we can still see perfectly fine, so there's no need to turn on the light. If you do want to turn on, you can actually face it away towards the wall or towards the ceiling, and sometimes that helps add a little bit of light and still doesn't make it look garish. Perfect. That's good. Now, Lee, take us back to the time when you handed in that resignation at that previous architecture firm, and you stepped out that door, and suddenly it's like, okay, I got to do some work, and I have to build something to be able to pay my bills. You know, did you have any projects lined up, or what was that initial time period like in terms of finding work?
Well, I will say with all honesty, I had no projects, no leads. I had a very strong sense of ethics to my previous firm not to take work away from them or sneak behind their back and talk to people that I considered my clients. They were the people that they reported to me, they talked to me, I had client contact with them, I wrote the proposals, I wrote the letters. I wasn't going to do that. So the first few months I probably didn't do any project work for a couple of months. I really had to sit down and ask myself, okay, if I'm going to start this business, what do I have to do? So it's just like any other design project. As an architect, you look at, okay, well, I have to define the problem, and how do I get there? And you start a process, however you do that. And I went through the list. I was very organized, but I wanted to establish quickly a sense of credibility that I wasn't a freelancer and I was an established architecture firm. So I had to do all the things to put in place that I was a legitimate architecture firm. So letterhead, business cards, website, private telephone, private checking account, private credit card, basically creating a business that was completely independent of myself and my family. And it took some time to get those in place. But in the process of doing that, I began to network. I began to talk to people. I went to lunch with people. I started shaking trees, if you will, asking myself.
And what kind of people would you meet with, Lee, when you went to lunch?
To be honest with you, I started probably with contractors. Contractors are an excellent source of work, especially contractors that I had worked with in the past. I also started meeting with community groups. I had done quite a bit of work with other community groups in Pittsburgh, and they were a good source of projects. So I started figuring out were there local community groups. So I met a few people that were involved in community groups or something similar to that in my area. Started to announce to everybody, here I am, I have a firm. And before long, a few things started to happen. I was registered with the AIA as a firm, so people could find me through the AIA's database. And oddly enough, probably the thing that got me started was a previous client had sought me out on their own with no solicitation on my part, and they interviewed me and my past employer for a project, and we went through a traditional selection process, and they hired me for a project that was very similar to one I had done with them while I was working for a previous firm. And that was very fortunate. So that was the project that launched my business. I had a few small single-family residential projects that had happened upon me by serendipity, you could say, that was keeping things going. But between those small residential projects that tend to find you when you're a sole practitioner and this larger housing project with this community group, it gave me stability to get started.
Okay, good. So I want to dig into community group, because when you say community group, what exactly are you talking about? Give me an example of who these community groups would be, and if I live here in California, what possible community groups could I go knock on?
Sure. Well, in the Pittsburgh area, there's groups they call CBOs, or community-based organizations. Basically, they're neighborhood groups that are nonprofit organizations that establish themselves because they are interested in the quality of life and the built environment in their community. They take on a variety of different forms and looks, but oftentimes they'll have the word, your community development company, or your neighborhood community development company, things like that. Sometimes those community groups hire organizations to run projects, so they may hire a third party to be the eyes and ears for them. So I sought them out as well. And I also sought out developers. I wasn't afraid to go to a big developer and throw my hat in the ring and say, I'm an architect and I'm familiar with doing this kind of work, and what can I do to help you? And there were a few of them out there that were either real estate companies that were trying to grow into being developers, or other people that were trying to do projects by getting into development, and sometimes that took on the form of a general contractor.
Okay. Now, what with these developers in these community groups, you say they were like, for instance, the real estate companies trying to grow into developers. How would you approach the developers? So say I'm John Smith, and how would you go around finding the developer, and then how would you approach them if you hadn't met them before? And those, were these people you already knew?
I have to admit that there was some cold calling that went into play, and I don't find that to be an efficient marketing plan. Most people know that nowadays. So I can't say that method gave me a lot of leads. But what started to happen was a name recognition started to happen more than actual work coming into play. So even 10 years ago, I was starting to put into place that here I am, I'm an architect, I have my own practice, and I'm out here looking for work. And I just had to invest in the process, much like one invests in a garden, that if you're going to have a successful garden, there are certain things you do to get that garden to work. But if you're in a hurry and you're impatient, you're probably not going to be successful at it. So building relationships was something I did from day one. I just went to lunch with people. I called people up on the phone. Hey, you have to eat lunch anyway. Do you have an hour to meet with me? And all we did was talk. All we did was get to know one another. We had coffee. I didn't necessarily ask for work per se. I just wanted to get to know them. And as that was happening, work from that avenue wasn't specifically coming in immediately, but I was, again, fortunate that small single-family projects started to come in the door, and I was working on them part-time, and I was looking for more work part-time.
Okay. So that kind of filled in the holes while waiting for the bigger stuff to break.
It did. You have to begin to figure out or ask the questions, okay, I don't necessarily know what I'm supposed to do, but I need to start asking questions and start figuring out what it is I don't know and what it is I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, okay. So a phone call to a developer might be, hi there, my name's Enoch, and I'm an architect in there. We haven't met before, but I'm just calling around to get to know people and would like to take you out for lunch, or how would that phone call go?
Well, that was similar. It could have taken the form of a letter or an email.
Okay.
But what I started to do that was actually more successful is I started to call the contractors that I had worked with in my previous firm. They were larger contractors, and there were many contact people in those firms that knew me. They knew me from working in this other office. And I learned early on that if you can get other people to be your referral network, that could be a very, very successful way of marketing, because then you're getting everybody else to market for you. So
how do you get someone to be part of your referral network?
It takes a lot of time. It does take a lot of time. Sometimes call it luck, sometimes call it chance, but there was a few occasions where a contractor would come across something, and it would be in my area. So we were talking to the east of Pittsburg, and they would either be trying to get a project, or they would hear somebody that was looking at a project and they needed an architect. So they immediately thought, I know an architect out east, why don't you call Lee Calisti? And occasionally a few of those calls came through. Now I will say that I spent a lot of time chasing calls. I spent a lot of time pursuing things, and the success rate isn't super high, but I just believed in the process. I believed that by continually putting my name out there, by continually being in front of people, that sooner or later people would know, who is this guy and what can he do?
Yeah, okay. Now, we did talk earlier about the fact that your wife is a teacher, and you mentioned that in this interview also, that you had that salary coming in to help bolster the fact that your income was reduced. How long would you say that it took you to be able to achieve a certain revenue where if she wasn't working, that you would have been able to survive? For someone who doesn't have a spouse that works, well, it's just a general...
Sure. Well, the ugly truth of starting on your own...
Are you going to say even now, or 10 years later?
I went back and looked at some numbers. I was curious because I wanted to know myself. I didn't remember all the details, but year one, you just have to throw it away.
Yeah.
Year two started to be promising, and for the first couple of years, I was close, not fully, but close to replacing the salary that I had left. Now, I was teaching part-time, and when I say my salary, I am talking my salary from teaching and my salary from my practice. But I thought that if I could get back to where I was at before I left my previous firm, that would be a sense of stability for me, and it was a sense of I'm doing this, I'm making this. So in year 5, in my fiscal year 5, not only did I get back to my previous salary, but I had surpassed it quite a bit, and I finally felt like I was arriving. I had a steady flow of work. I had an income that was more than where I had left, and I started to feel respected as a practitioner that was on his own. And then that went well for a year or two, and then there's this recession thing that came about. Hit most of us, and I have to say that hurt. It hurt all of us, and still many colleagues of ours that haven't survived that. But I will say the good news is in year 10, I've completed 10 fiscal years. This past year was my best year ever, and if I look back at the salary I had before I left that previous firm and where I was at the end of this year, probably 75% more of where I was at when I left that firm.
Okay.
So I think that, after 5-6 years, you can be viable on your own. That really depends on some circumstances that are in your control, but probably a lot of circumstances that are not.
Okay. So you would say, just to pin down a little bit narrower focus of where you thought it was viable, was it about year 3 where you could have survived with your family frugally, or was it more like year 4?
I would probably say year 4, before we could have survived solely on what I was making. We had, just as a personal decision in our own family, we had always tried to survive on one income, even though we lived on 2. We just tried to make those kinds of decisions, the home we lived in, the kinds of decisions we made. And we found it possible, actually very possible, to live on you could say 1.5 incomes. So we could live on my wife's income and my teaching income. And then the practice brought to the table, gravy, if you will.
Yeah. Okay. So when you say you were comparing it with your previous salary at your previous firm, that was the salary alone. That wasn't the salary plus the teaching. So
That's
what you're saying is that, in year 4 or so, your salary as a practitioner plus your teaching was almost equivalent to your salary as an architect at the firm. Is that right?
That's correct. Now I can say that because I teach a design studio, so it probably takes at least a third of the quote work week to accomplish that. So it's not like it's merely being gone for an hour or 2 during the week. We're talking 3 afternoons a week. So that salary becomes very important because it has to replace a third of the time that you're out of the office, or a third of your billable time that you're out of the office. So when you do take a teaching position part-time like I do, and you teach design studio like I do, then it is a tough decision to make, because it does take a big part of your work week to do that.
That's a good point, and very interesting, because like you said, those are not billable hours. Now, one of the questions we talked about previous to this call was a little hypothetical question of if you could talk to yourself 10 years ago, and oh, by the way, we did want to mention that this is your 10-year anniversary coming up next month, you said, right? So
That's
big,
correct.
Huge congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's very
big
exciting.
Congratulations, yeah. So now if you were to look at yourself 10 years ago, what would that conversation look like? Is there any advice you would give to your younger self?
I've often looked back and wondered, how in the world did I ever do this? I feel like I don't know very much now, so how could I have known anything back then? But yet, that's not the case. The one thing that I learned that was really important, and this will probably lead to other questions, is you have to be careful when selecting work, and you have to be even more careful when turning down work. Now, that's from a business standpoint. When you turn down work and you turn away income, I would get very excited in those early years when someone approached me and they wanted to do work with me, and I thought, I got a project. That's fantastic. Well, 10 years later and a little crankier, I don't really feel like it's a project until I have a signed contract and a retainer. And it's just an attitude of how you look at work. So when I'm marketing now and I'm deciding how much workload I can take right now, I don't count inquiries, and I don't consider projects where I've met with a client for a meeting or 2 until I get that signed contract and I know it's a real project. And then I have to basically keep marketing and keep dealing with inquiries until I am full. But but those years, those first few formative years, I didn't think that way, and I made a few mistakes, and I thought I had some projects that were going to fly that were actually pretty exciting, and a few projects came in the door that were probably just work, a little less exciting, and I turned them down because, I have these projects over here and they're going to be wonderful projects. Well, guess what? They didn't go through. They never materialized, and I thought I was going to be extremely busy. The opposite happened. So that was a mistake on my part.
Interesting. Anything else that you tell your 10-year-old self besides that awesome piece of advice?
I would say just keep being aggressive and get out more.
Yeah.
Get out there more, become more visible, believe in yourself, believe that you actually do know something, and people do want to listen to what you have to say.
Okay.
You have to be positive.
Did you find in those early years there was a little bit of confidence where you felt like there was a little bit of inconfidence there, maybe how people perceive you or trying to come across as competent? You say have confidence, so I'm wondering, is that something that you struggled with?
It was, because I was the buck stopped with me, so to speak. I didn't have anybody else to run to. I didn't have anybody else that could bear the blame or take the blame, or anybody else that was going to get work to come in. So I think you do have to be confident in yourself. I just think that so often we don't know how to deal with that as architects because we're frequently perceived as being arrogant, and we don't really know where that boundary between confidence and arrogance is. And I certainly don't advocate the arrogance. I think that's hurting our profession. But at the same time, we do need to be confident is, hey, I know something, I can do something, I can help you, and I can help you get to where you're going to go. And that can be portrayed in an appropriate fashion if you just use your own personality, your own self, and you convey that to people. People will listen. Eventually, they will gravitate towards you.
Okay, good. Well, you said that would prompt some more questions, and there was a question that I had, and I did want to touch on this really quick. You had some great quotes on your blog that I sent you previously, and I'm just going to read them off here. And you said, this is a quote, it says, it's from Henry Richardson, "I'll plan anything a man wants, from a cathedral to a chicken coop. That's the way I make my living." And then the second quote is from Julia Morgan, and she says, "Don't ever turn down a job because it's beneath you." So how does job selection influence future projects? And as an additive, I also want to mention, this is the flip side. Glenn Murcutt said, "The compromise you make today will inform the quality of client you get tomorrow."
This is going to be
easy questions, Lee.
This is going to be an ongoing debate in our profession and in the circles of people that I run with, because I have dear friends and colleagues that would probably be on all sides of this issue, and some would be on extreme sides of the issue. And I like to explore these things in my blog. I like to ask these questions, and the context behind that was a blog post where I was posting quotes from a book that I had read, and I thought was germane. I thought was interesting to think about, because so many of the stars, if you will, seem to be able to handpick their own work and give the impression that unless you're giving me, one of these types of projects, that we just don't do that. Well, I admire anybody that can handpick their own work, and to some degree, I think we all do that. We all can handpick our own work to some degree. But many of the projects that have been successful for me, that have been very enjoyable and have been very fruitful or even lucrative, I could have never known that at the beginning. The first impression I had with those clients was actually, wow, this person and my personality, we don't necessarily click, or what they want isn't what I want. But I pursued those anyway, and I found that the opposite was true, that I have found some of the best clients, the most lucrative projects, and the most interesting design work that I was able to do came from situations where at the beginning I could have easily written those people off and thought it wasn't going to turn to anything. And the other thing that came into mind that I learned from my past employer was that it's up to us as architects to make a project interesting. That any project that comes in the door is not interesting, or it's either not interesting or interesting it's neither. It's nothing. And it's up to us as architects to find what's interesting in it. And sometimes those projects have impossible budgets and they just don't have the visual things that we think we want to do as architects. But I find the challenge, the passion that I put into it is what can I put into that project that makes it something special, that makes it something unique. Maybe I'm an eternal optimist, maybe I'm just idealistic. But I think the thing that's made my business successful was building relationships, and you just don't know who is going to be a good relationship and where that relationship's going to go. That relationship could lead to an amazing amount of work if you just, are willing to invest in it. So if we take an elitist attitude as architects and we snub our nose at some of these projects, that may in some respect help architecture in some bizarre sense, but as a business and as a profession and as a viable job for all of us in the future, I don't think I can buy into that. I really think that if we as architects want to have a job in the future, we want to have a play in our built environment in the future, we have to be careful how we come across and what kinds of projects we turn down, and find a way to inject in those projects, whether they're very humble or very modest, inject what we do best. If we are truly as good as we say we are, if we truly can do the things that we say we are, then we can really turn a pig's ear into a silk purse, or whatever cliche you want to use. We really can turn that around. I think we just have to be a little bit more patient, a little bit more humble about it.
Okay. Well, Lee, I have two more questions here I want to touch on, two more topics really quick, and one of them was the fact that you built your own house.
Okay.
And then the second one was a little bit about your blog. But before I do that, I just want to ask you really quick: do you do any marketing, any active marketing?
Well, I can't say I have a specific active program in place. In some respects, I'm a people person. I like to talk to people. I'm not really good in large crowds. I'm very comfortable one-on-one. But I have been using the blog, social media, my website as a common way of marketing myself. It puts me out there. I haven't done a whole lot with advertising in the traditional sense. Architects, I guess for some reason, we don't tend to do that. So the marketing that I've done has been basically building relationships and building a referral network. And I'm finding that, yes, 10 years later, I'm finding that it's beginning to work. People are referring me. I have past clients referring me to future clients, contractors referring me. I try to bring contractors into projects that I have, and they bring me into projects that they have. And it's that kind of referral network that sooner or later will work for you if you just are willing to be patient.
Okay. So I think we can say that the majority of your jobs do come from your referral network. And then you mentioned, this is a good segue into your blog, because you mentioned that you do some social media. I know on your blog you have You're on House, HOUZZ.com, right. And you also have a Facebook page.
Right.
And you also, you have a nice website, LeeCalisti.com.
Thank you.
As well as, very, very slick, as well as thinkarchitect.wordpress.com, which is your blog.
Right.
Could you touch on a little bit about what you've learned through this process of doing each one of those things, in terms of finding clients and maybe other surprises that you learned along the way?
Well, I'm kind of riding on the coattails of a few virtual friends I have out there that have very successful blogs, and they've taught me a lot. But one, it goes out of my comfort zone because I have to do some things. I have to learn some software that I'm not necessarily always interested in doing, but I'm finding that I have to adapt to the way the practice is going and the way culture is going. I wouldn't necessarily choose to do some of those things on my own volition, but then now that I've done them, I'm very excited about them. The blog actually was one of my favorites once I finally dove in. I had cold feet for about 6 months, but then I had so many things I wanted to say, and I found that I just needed to say them. And I thought, if anybody, one person would read this thing, would even listen to me, that would be pretty exciting. So I found that before you know it, I had so many things to say, and I do mix it with humor, sarcasm, and sometimes occasional rant. But I think that's not because I'm trying to complain. I think it's just because we as architects are very passionate people. We believe in what we do. We just are very excited about what we do, and sometimes it comes across as a rant. It's not intended to be complaining. And oddly enough, I got my first project last month through the House website. Someone actually contacted me and it said, I'd seen your work on House, and they interviewed me, and they interviewed a series of other architects, and I got my first commission from it. So it's amazing how these things go. Our culture is very internet-based. It's very connected to the web. Whether you want it to be that way, I think really doesn't matter anymore. The way I want the practice to go and the way I want business to go, what I think of it as almost unimportant. I have to look at how it is and be realistic about it. People use social media. People use the web. It's how we get to know one another. And I have to be willing to step out into that world, and I have to be willing to use it to my benefit and my advantage to market.
Mm-hmm.
But then the amazing thing about it is what I get back in return is people such as yourself and many other people like you across the country. I may not have met face-to-face yet, but now I have a series of friends and colleagues. And it's amazing. You never know where those relationships are going to go. It's just possible that those relationships could go more than just being social, that they could be business relationships in the future. And I don't know that, but I'm willing to throw those seeds in the ground and nurture them and allow that to happen. And if it takes another 10 years for that to happen, then so be it. But it's been a really great way to broadcast. And in the last few months, my blog has had a tremendous increase in traffic, and I feel that I was just being frank and open about a few topics that I thought needed to be said. They were done to educate people, but they were done with a little bit of frustration behind it.
Okay. Okay, you can still hear me, Lee?
I'm here. I can hear you.
Okay, good. So I figure we can go ahead and wrap it up now, and if you hear some sound, it's the kids. They just got home, and the wife, so we might hear some kid sounds in the background. But we left off talking a little bit about the social media aspect in the blog. Is there any one of those avenues that you found has been more effective for creating a profile for yourself out there in cyberspace?
Well, I think they all have their own purpose. I think the blog allows me to educate as well as express myself. I think it's been that avenue. I don't think the blog has been great in terms of marketing, but I did get one job from it. I actually wrote a post that was more about building codes, and someone contacted me and they said, you seem to know a lot about this subject. So I took the commission. It wasn't, again, something I was thrilled with or found a lot of excitement with, but it was something that I found that I knew a lot about. The beauty of Facebook, even though I'm not a big fan of using it socially, I tend to have my own little complaints about it. I do use it mildly personally, but from a business standpoint, the wonderful thing about it is I can use it as an update of what's going on in my office, and I can quickly post the things that I think are important in the profession of architecture, things that are going on in the practice of architecture that I think are really important, and it's something that is so popular and so common, so I can quickly get out there, hey, this is what I think is important about architecture, and it begins to let people know what things are important to me.
Sure. If you had to pick one of those avenues in addition to your website, which one would it be?
Oh boy. I think I enjoy the blog the most, but I think something like House or Facebook is probably more effective from a business standpoint.
Okay.
I would probably say.
Good. Well, just to close up really quick, first of all, thank you so much for your time, Lee.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, pleasure is totally mine. And that's the purpose here of these interviews, Lee, is to hopefully disseminate this information so that other people that are looking to go into the practice of architecture, etc., can hear these stories and pick up things that will help them make their decision. So one thing that you did that a lot of architects want to do, including myself, is build your own house. And I encourage people to go online, because I believe you have your house and your plans online on your website. Is that correct? I know I've seen the plans.
I do, and there's several links to magazines that it's been published in. They're there as well.
Okay. So then the follow-up question to that would be: you bought the land, built the house, designed the house, and had a contractor build the house, correct?
Right.
And how how important was that in terms of your career of architecture? Did that add any validity to you as an architect, or was it more just a personal thing where you wanted to have your own house?
Well, obviously it has a lot to do with my family and providing a place for my family. We needed more space, so simply put, we built a house because we needed more space. We lived in a very, very small house before. But to me, it had a lot to do with credibility as an architect, that I could make this and I could live in it, and I could actually do something that started to embody beliefs and philosophies and opinions about architecture. I could begin to put out there that I'm willing to live in something that I think has meaning and speaks to some of the issues that are current in our housing industry. And I invite you to come look at it, and maybe you'll start to share some of the opinions I have too.
Okay, wonderful. And I noticed that it is a very, very slick, contemporary design. And I know most of us as architects shun the word style, as you mentioned previously.
I don't like it. Yes, I don't like that word.
And I don't blame you. And I guess the question I would say is, I know there are a lot of architects, well, depending on what school you went to. For instance, my school is very design-oriented. And so a lot of us coming out of there, we want to do very high design, contemporary type of buildings. But then we struggle with the fact that, the general public at large, it's still a minority of them that are looking for that kind of design service.
That's right.
So did you find that designing a contemporary house, that helped you at all in terms of attracting those clients to you, people that would let you design and help them bring their design to fruition that was in a more contemporary style, or style, but
I think it has. I think along the way, early on, well, we've been in the house for 5 years now, so it hasn't had a tremendous amount of time, but yes, people are starting to see that, and they're starting to see other work that's similar to it, and they say, yes, that's what we want. They may not want something that's as edgy as some of the other modern architecture that some of us architects like, but they find that they're not satisfied with the other styles that they find around them, so they start to see that. The other thing I was trying to do with it was I was trying to draw a line in the sand to some degree and say, I'm interested in doing this kind of work. I'm not going to do it exclusively, or I'm not going to limit myself and only do this kind of work necessarily right now, but I am going to draw a line in the sand, and the house that I live in, the website, the way my website's designed, and basically everything that comes off my hand, if you will, or off my sketchbook, whatever, I try to have a certain vision with it that says this is what I'm interested in and this is where I think my strengths lie. Now, somebody may not align with that and they may choose to go to somebody else, and I respect that. But then I've been fortunate enough that enough people said, hey, I really like the way your website is. Hey, I really like your house. I really like that project, such and such a project that I saw on your website. I want one of those too. So it is starting to work.
Good. Okay. Well, Lee, do you have any parting words for an architects that are struggling out there now? Because we still have architects being laid off. We have unemployed architects. We have architects that are going out on their own and trying to find work. What would you like to tell them from your perspective?
I would say don't give up. I would say if you really want to be an architect, if you're like me, you're one of these odd people like me, I have to do this. I literally have to do this. This is not meaning I have to do this to pay my bills. I have to do this because this is who I am. It's my personality. It's how I define myself in some respects. It's not more important than my family or my faith, but it is very important to me. But if you have to do something else in the meantime to support yourself and support your family, then we can all respect that and we all honor that. But don't give up on it. Come back to it. Try to stay connected to this profession somehow, because the profession still needs you, and we still need really good architects out there. And if enough of us are going away, then where is the profession going to be in the future? So don't leave the profession. Just hang in there.
Awesome. Well, Lee, thank you for your time. We really appreciate it. And people can contact you if they want to reach out to you. They can find you by going to leecalisti.com. I'll put a link to that in the show notes for the blog.
Thank you so much.
Are you open to having anyone that has an extra follow-up question to reach out and contact you?
Yeah, please contact me. I'll do my best to answer questions the best I can. If I get a lot of questions that are the same or similar, I may respond to it in a blog post or something like that to try to answer them all at one time. We'll see how it goes.
All right. It's been an amazing interview. Thank you, Lee, so much.
Thank you. I very much appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. All right, so we'll go ahead and cut that off there. And just thank you for your time. How do you think it went, Lee? How'd the interview go?
I felt very comfortable. I felt very comfortable. Again, sometimes I don't know if people want to hear what I have to say, but once I get wound up, I'm very passionate in what I do. So maybe that's a buzzword that we're not supposed to use anymore. I don't know. But I'm honored that you would be willing to include me in your interview series so quickly in what you're doing, because I respect what you're doing, and I think it's very, very important. We're not really good business people as architects, and if somebody like you can help us along the way, we all want to be there.
Yeah,
we all want to still be there tomorrow.
Definitely.
And if we don't have work, if we don't think about the business end of it, we don't think about the relevant issues that are affecting our practice, none of us are going to be there.
Yep. Ultimately, it's about the built environment,
It is. And I think we all have different strengths, and we can all bring something to the table. But if we stop thinking about architecture as a business, even if we don't like that, if that's not interesting, in years to come, it's going to hurt us. It's already hurting us.
Yeah.
So I appreciate what you're doing.
Thanks, Lee. I appreciate it. So it sounds like someone's preparing dinner over there?
Unfortunately, we have a heat detector in the kitchen that occasionally is cranky, and you have to go fan it to get it to
I
quiet
see.
down.
Okay. Well, thanks for your time, and I don't want to take any more time away from your precious family. So until we talk again, Lee.
Thank you very much. See you.
Over and out. Okay, bye-bye. Well, that's it for today. If you like this video, please share it by clicking one of the share buttons. And to get updates when I post a new article, video, or podcast, visit businessofarchitecture.com, sign up for our email list, and I'll send you my exclusive ebook, Social Media for Architects.
Everybody knows that you just gotta do it.